Hello everyone, The Nerdy Steve here, and today we will be talking about the Alchemy rebalancing for August 11th, 2022. And then I'm going to talk about four different Alchemy decks because I believe tomorrow is the best of one qualifier, next week is the best of three qualifier, maybe the other way around, and next week is also the qualifier weekend tournament, which is Alchemy. So this is actually very relevant for those. So let's do a brief uh overview of what just happened. So there are two main changes. First is Cabaret Revels, which was part of a really, really powerful combo deck. Same thing with Racketeer Boss. Both of these allowed you to combo with Asarak and Ominous Traveler, which were cards in Alchemy that you could cast over and over again to generate basically infinite value in a single turn. And Cabaret Revels now has a stricter mana requirement, meaning that the Naya decks and the Jund decks that would play it will have a much harder time getting Cabaret Revels onto the battlefield and then comboing later, which makes it more a little bit slower and unreliable. And that's really, really good because a lot of the aggro decks or the control decks in Alchemy could sometimes compete with these Cabaret Revels decks if the Cabaret Revels deck just had to stall a turn or two. And this change makes that happen more. So the combo becomes a lot less reliable and a lot less consistent early on, and it just losing those value points in the first couple turns, really, really good. But more importantly, Racketeer Boss now only allows the perpetual treasure to only happen once. So you can't Racketeer Boss to then combo with Ominous Traveler or Asarak really at all. You get to do one loop and then that treasure's gone. And so you're going to need a lot more going on to get that combo going. And that is just going to simply make those decks so much less reliable. They can still exist. Bergie's a card, and Goblin Trap Finder, or whatever it's called, can still reduce stuff. And you can still, like, maybe do an infinite type thing, but it's just going to be so unreliable and not anywhere near as powerful that that deck is basically gone from a tier 1 strategy to not really being that relevant. And then we also have a lot of draft changes. These are going to be playable in Alchemy, but like these are mainly more limited cards than constructed cards, so it's not going to be that relevant. But I will say I love the change in the Baldur's Gate draft, and I think it's going to make the draft. I love this format, and I think this has enough changes and enough balances to like make the format even better. And so I'm just very, very happy with that. But now let's go and look at four different alchemy decks that are unaffected by these changes and why they're good. And because I'll play them probably make a video over the next couple days. I have a video tomorrow for Explore, but then after that, we're gonna just be doing alchemy probably for the next week until the qualifier happens. So let's go. So this first deck is a mono red aggro deck in Alchemy, and like all not all mono red decks, but like most mono red decks, we want to come out very, very quick and not have our opponent to set up or do anything, and we want to, just kill them before they get any of the Esper decks can build up their board and card advantage engine, or we want to get out quicker than the other aggro decks. And this deck does that very effectively and very quickly. We have, Big Spender is kind of like a surprising card for this type of deck. It's always much, much better than I thought it would. A 2-1 haster that not only can ramp your mana, but when, you have a bunch of treasure tokens, you can. Its spellbook is a little, like, kind of underwhelming in the sense that it's not going to do a lot for you all the time, but it does give you a lot of options and things to do with your treasures that you're generating with Big Spender that you wouldn't otherwise if you aren't using the treasures for mana, then getting, a card that can cycle or draw or do a little extra stuff is really, really good. So that's kind of that. Ambergris is a really, really good card in limited, and being able to, get your hand out of the way, then specialize it and just draw more cards and deal more damage. Ambergris is just very, very quick. Lots of damage very, very quickly. Again, quick, quick, quick with this mono red deck. And just, wonderful. And then we also have Traumatic Prank, which is a really weird threaten change. And so not only can you steal the creature, right? So you're taking an opponent's creature so you can then attack with it and deal more damage because you remove the blocker. But that creature from now on cannot block and deals damage to the opponent. So it kind of is like a threaten that does a lot of really cool things that we want our deck because it's just permanent damage if the creature survives, and if your opponent blocks the creature to kill it, then you've gotten rid of it anyway, so it's removal too. It's really, really cool and really, really powerful, and I like what it does here. But yeah, so this is the mono red deck. Highly recommend if you're into it. This deck, again, I got all these decks on Untapped, and I'm going to be playing with them on stream. This deck does have Cemetery Gatekeeper in here, and this is kind of an inclusion because of the Revels deck that was looping creatures. So if you Cemetery Gatekeeper a creature, right? The Rebels deck couldn't go off because they would die from the Gatekeeper triggers. So in a post nerf world, this deck will change a little bit. And obviously, if you go for best of 3, it will change a bit. But this is just a really, really good baseline if you want, to be the mono red aggro deck, killing your opponent as soon as you possibly can. Now, as opposed to the mono red deck, I think the mono green deck gets a lot better in a post nerf world because it wasn't necessarily as aggressive or interacting full as the mono red deck. So I always found it harder to compete with the Rebels combo deck in Alchemy. But now, since we don't have to worry about that, we can just really, really benefit from what makes the mono green deck good. And that is our creatures are really, really big and really, really beefy. And against other aggressive strategies, we're going to be able to go bigger than them. And also, against, the more control strategies, our deck has the benefit of, because our creatures are so big, each creature is a huge threat that needs to be dealt with right away. And we also have stuff like Old Growth Troll, and Werewolf Pack Leader that can generate, multiple cards or threats over time. With, Uvenwald Oddity, a 4/4 haste trampler out of nowhere means your opponent isn't really ever safe. And then we also have the cool, unnatural growth can make combat terrible for your opponent, but doubling all your trample creatures is again very, very big. And this deck is just so reliable. We also have the Alchemy card Forceful Cultivator, which allows you, when you don't have lands in your hand, it costs 2 less, and then you can get a basic land card to ramp. And Forceful Cultivator is one of the cards that, it allows you to reliably keep a lot more hands because, it's, if you have 2 lands and a cultivator, you're gonna be able to cast it and ramp. And that's just really, really good and adds a nice consistency to this deck that doesn't exist elsewhere. And so that's just, this deck is going to be really, really good for people. If mono red isn't necessarily your favorite type of play style, but you want another aggressive deck, this deck, just like in standard right now, is just very reliably consistent. It can come out of nowhere, and it just has a lot of cool things to do. And I think, again, in a post-nerf world with Alchemy Rebels gone, this deck can be tweaked a little bit to, fight better and more effectively against maybe the Esper decks that are going to be really, really prominent and popular. Speaking of a lot of the Esper decks, there are literally a billion different ways to build Esper. You can be more aggro with Rafine and Diviner, or you can be more control like this. We have tons of creature removal. We have Tasha and the Wandering Emperor. We just have a lot of card advantage, counter magic. We have everything going. This is a very, very controlled deck, and this is very appealing for people who love that agency and that ability to kind of, maneuver the board and cards to, outplay your opponent. And there's also tons of room to, again, I'm going to say this over and over again, in a post Revels world, to specifically in best of three, change your main deck and sideboard to allow you to win very specific matchups. Again, Tasha is just really, really great in aggro against aggro decks because, again, it's just something that it's a kind of a proactive, board wipe where if you have Tasha out and Tasha survives a turn or two against an aggro deck, it just means you can then Doomscar later on, and your opponent's just so far behind and gonna have such a difficult time dealing with Tasha, where then you can, use the -2 or -6 to get tons of value. And Toss is just a big threat right away and really, really good in this Alchemy format. And much better, again, without Revels, because Revels can win in one turn through Tasha. But now, since decks actually have to attack with creatures and go through the combat step, Tasha is going to become that much better. But again, there's tons of different ways you can build this deck and suit it to your playstyle more. And this is only the control version of Esper. There is an aggro version or more mid-range version too. And I'll be playing a lot of those too on stream if you want to come watch that. But Esper is really, really powerful and really, really great. And they all not necessarily play similarly, but if you're an Esper player, there are going to be you have removal and control aspects to it regardless of how you're playing it, and it's a really, really fun thing to do. So highly recommend checking out all the different Esper lists in Alchemy if that's your type of playstyle and thing, because there's a lot of ways to play it that are just freaking fun. I mean, I love everything, so. And our final deck I'm going to briefly discuss is the Hinata deck in Alchemy. This kind of was like the boogeyman very early on because of the combo with Hinata and Snowborn Simulacrum that was going on. So with Snowborn Simulacrum, in after you have a Hinata on the battlefield, Snowborn Simulacrum, you get to conjure a copy of every single permanent on the battlefield and put it into your hand. And I don't know if you've played Magic lately, but there are always a lot of permanents on the battlefield, even if they're just lands. So Hinata into Snowborn Simulacrum can just create such cool, weird board states and play patterns that's just, I think, really, really wonderful and also very, very powerful. Again, Hinata plays very, very similarly to the standard counterpart, so if that is something you're used to playing, I would highly recommend this deck because it's very, very similar and it's a really good way to ease yourself into Alchemy. And again, like I said before, with the Revels deck now gone from Alchemy, the Hinata can kind of fill into that combo space a little bit because, again, a lot of decks had trouble with the Revels deck because Revels deck could beat a lot of disruption and would win in one single turn. And this deck now, since we don't have to worry about that, can navigate its game plan a little better and a little more effectively and really, attack different strategies in different and cool ways. And I think Hinata's gonna be really, really good here, and I would recommend playing it while you can. Well, thank you all for watching this video. I know it was a little different, but, when different things happen, I want to talk about it, and I know Alchemy, while it might not be the most loved format right now, it is very important in the next, couple weeks to be informed about it for a lot of people. So I hope this video kind of give you some insight and some ideas. Again, I would always recommend going to Untapped. Not sponsored, but they always have great lists and good resources for different decks, if that's your thing. I will be using a lot of these decks and building my own at twitch.tv/TheNerdySteve if you want to, watch me for the next couple of weeks live. But yeah, I hope this video was at least somewhat informative and somewhat insightful. And yeah, thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. You should, I know I just said it, go watch me or follow me at twitch.tv/TheNerdySteve. And I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And thanks for watching. Bye.